Well, we have the ecological fund. They still get 2% from the federation account. Then lately, states, I mean, for a while now, they've been complaining about erosion, how they need to really battle gully erosion to all sorts. How are you utilizing that fund?
Well, the ecological fund, the past administration actually held that in the SG's office and ran that for the SGF's office, and that's still the case. What we're doing in terms of responding to erosion is the new MAP program, which is a collaboration with the World Bank, and it's looking systemically at your land use issues and your watershed management issues. Everything that you see with gully erosion is inevitably man-made, so those solutions are there. It is, again, a crisis in some parts of this country, but we're working in about 17 states now with the World Bank, and over time, again, trying to address those root causes. So fixing some of the emergencies that we have now, but also addressing the longer term so that you're not continuously putting good money after bad. There are solutions to this, and it is about land management, it is about drainages, it is about the way, we look at building urban centres that sprawl without any design whatsoever. It is also about the way in which we are using land. The deforestation that is happening is taking away a lot of what holds the soil together, and so therefore now you see much of the rainy season, the top water coming along and creating gullies, and that's just further eroded year after year. An incredibly expensive venture to try to stop.
I've heard states complain that it takes the federal government a long time to come to their aid when they complain about certain degradation. Is that the case, and why so?
Well, in the past it might have taken them time, but I think, if you want to do something well and you want to sustain it, an engineering design doesn't happen in a week. With all the technology that you have to survey and you have to design, and that takes time. And I think that, one of the things that we will have to grapple with is that in strengthening institutions on the governance side is that government should be a continuum. So whatever I do in my time here, I should be able to hand that baton over and the next administration build on it because the institutions are strong. Now we're grappling with that because clearly there are huge capacity gaps, and there's not much of a historic memory. No institutional memory. So if I go in now and say I want to do waste to wealth programs and everybody jumps on and says this is a great idea, let's do it, and I get the private sector, I do a little bit of digging and then suddenly 4 or 5 people come through the door and say to me, actually we've done 33 of these projects and they're existing in this country, and so could you pay us our debt? And then you suddenly find out that across 36 states of the Federation you have projects that the federal government has done, and you now have to go and review them. Are there any of them that are quick wins that you can finish? Some of them, those that you really need now to terminate. And so we spend a lot of time firefighting on the one hand and still trying to meet the demands of an expectant Nigerian population that change comes yesterday.
One of the agencies that it's in your ministry, Nostra, last, I think, 7th Assembly, they had a lot of complaint about Nostra. Nostra doesn't have capacity. They even rely on IOCs to get vehicles, helicopters to detect spills, let alone funds to go ahead of it. What's going on in that agency now?
I think let's be fair to regulatory agencies. They're not the most attractive things to invest in. When you have bricks, you know you're getting a brick, and so you pay for it. The mortar is less attractive. It's like hardware. You go for the hardware, but the software is less attractive. But without that mortar, without that software, nothing works. So investments in Nostra have not been where they should be to strengthen that agency to take its independent role. And I think that's why they've been challenged. There is amazing capacity in Nostra. There are hundreds of Nigerians who are working there. But you've got to put the investments in to get the return. And so one of the things that we've done in the budget this year is to begin to look at Nostra, to look at NESRIA. These are 2 big regulatory agencies, the National Biosafety Agency. These are where we want to put some measure of investment in so that we know what we're getting out is that independent watchdog that can hold oil companies and not be, borrowing from them to do their work. Same thing happens to, the environmental impact assessment. Much more, is it the gold standard that Nigeria is operating with now, given that environment is such a big issue, climate change is such a big issue? I think that we still have more work to do, and we've got a few years to do that.
You know, before now, the issue of environment and even weather hasn't been much of a problem. When you travel outside the country, there's usually weather updates, issues about the environment for people. Are you thinking in that direction? Because now we just woke up and realized that it's upon us. When you talk about climate change, you experience the tremendous or the intense heat we all experienced a few months ago. Are you thinking of putting in place a structure whereby Nigerians on a daily basis, you get weather advisory, environment advisory, and issues that bother on your environment?
We're looking at partnerships.
It just might help.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, knowledge is really important here, and sharing it. So we are looking at partnerships with NIMET, and also looking at the NOA, so the National Orientation Agency, to get the message across. But I think this goes beyond what government is putting in place. There are so many other platforms that are engaging. It's for us to get the coherent message, to pass out what is it that we are doing, what is climate change. And so in schools and curriculum, whether they're private or public, they're doing this. I know Channels has got a program with Deutsche Welle now on the environment. So how do we leverage that? We've got numerous number of reporters who report on the environment. How do we, again, give them more expertise and skills and tools to get the message out? This is much more than what government can do alone. So again, it's another collective responsibility to educate and to pass that message out.
So do we look forward to, because I see people asking on Twitter that they like to see the program, because they say you have a good grasp of some of these issues. They want to see a blueprint going forward.
Yes, we will give you the vision, and this will be tied into the vision of this administration on the, as you said, the manifesto talks about achieving a number of targets, but we're also, you know, I think we should be reviewing and being responsive, because every day we have a new challenge and context matters. If we are just going to put a program that's cast in stone, then we're not in reality with a lot of expectations and perhaps things that are happening in people's lives today. This administration came in not with the challenges they had of the herdsmen and farmers. That's not to say that this is when it started now. It has been long brewing. But, you know, now we have to change and reflect a response to that as well, because you don't want to leave any Nigerian behind. And so I think, yes, you will see that the program, we will bring it out and share it, and people will be part of it. I think social media has been very helpful to us in informing expectations of young people, because for me, they're not the future, they are now. And how I engage them is understanding them better. And I think when you come from different generations, that's sometimes a struggle. But I think they've really helped us to show what kind of aspirations they have. They've got vision, they've got energy, and I think it's for us to try to support that and be in tune.
What do we expect, with gas flaring?
Gas flaring, the target we have is 2020 to end that. There are a number of policy issues. There are reality checks even within the Niger Delta and the infrastructure that's required to make that happen. So I think we, within the INDC that we are reviewing to make compatible with the Paris agreements and produce an action plan for Nigeria, you'll see that the gas flaring is up front and center on that. I think that's something we can achieve. The Ministry of Petroleum is doing incredibly well at looking at the policy issues. When we look at the energy mix that we should be having in this country, as we move from fossil fuels to renewables, you'll see the Ministry of Power is also taking that on very seriously.
I was going to ask you about Ogoni land, looking back a bit. The issues of funding you talked about. Is there likely to be a challenge in terms of continuous flow of funds? Because when you start, I'm sure that you wouldn't want to stop. You'd want to continue until it ends. Mm-hmm. So is it the federal government solely sponsoring, or are there partnerships to ensure that the funds do not stop so that the work does not stop?
I doubt that the work will stop. I think first and foremost, the polluter pays principle is up and doing, and oil companies are paying for what they do. In this particular case, there's been a commitment of $1 billion, and the governance structures that we're putting in place are the Governing Council, which will determine the programs and how the roadmap is implemented. But then there's also a Board of Trustees, where a trust fund for that money will be put. And we hope that we have fund managers there that can now begin to leverage that against other resources that are available, both internally and externally. Investments in the Niger Delta are done, by a number of agencies. The Ministry of Niger Delta has a budget. So they are part of this, and so therefore we look to synergize with them and make sure that we're all walking in the same direction. NDDC is another component of this, who is doing development. So even while we're cleaning up Ogoniland, to stay clean needs them to be part of the diversification of the economy. It needs to show the alternatives for livelihoods, industrialization, and that will come from other agencies and other monies. I think the plan to keep us all together, pulling the threads that we need, is important. The states in the Niger Delta get a considerable amount of funding. Derivation is there. What we need to be asking is, what are you doing with your money? And how is this actually benefiting people at the local level? We're always pointing to the federal level. We are trying to be as transparent and open and leverage resources to make sure that we clean up Ogoniland, to make sure that they're a part of the economy and its diversification. But we have to ask the states what they're doing with their resources as well. That spotlight has to shine on everyone.
Have we signed the Paris Agreement?
No, we haven't. It's a question that I know that you probably had up your sleeve. We have a year to sign the Paris Agreement. I think one of the things that this change agenda is about is taking charge. We fully supported the Paris Agreement, and certainly you saw our president there, reinforcing that in December. The implications of that agreement needs to be a discussion with various stakeholders in this country. It includes the National Assembly, our people. What are the implications of a plan? What are we actually signing on to? And that, I think, we did not have the time to do it by April. So for us, it was less of a photo opportunity. It's more of a reality. We start today with opening up the INDC discussion with a number of our ministers and stakeholders in Abuja. The Minister of State is chairing that. We have 3 or 4 series, and we hope that we can sign by September at the General Assembly. Ratification is another thing. But we didn't cause the emissions in Africa or in Nigeria. In fact, we are the least contributing to that, but yet we're the most affected by it. And I think that there are many responsibilities that must still be lived up to in the signing and ratification of the big emitters. And we're watching to see if that happens, and that it's not, one-sided. But it's about taking leadership and having that conversation here. You make an international commitment. What are the implications for Nigerians? And are we going to sign on to that? And if we are, people are ready, they're prepared, they're committed, and we can run with it.
Other than Ogoni, because, now, unfortunately, the militants are blowing up pipelines. What plans do you have to clean up other areas in the Niger Delta?
I think concurrently we have to look to see what kind of pollution we're talking about and its causes. And I think that, there has to be a sense of, as I said, collective responsibility. Ogoniland's is an opening to what should happen for the rest of the Niger Delta. But it's a very complex situation. It's taken us this long to get to say we are starting with the UNEP report of cleaning Ogoniland. We will do the rest of the Niger Delta, but it has to be a collective responsibility. Today, over 60% of the pollution in the Niger Delta is third-party breaks. It's criminal. So, and this is not being done by people coming from the outside. This is being done by people doing this to themselves. And this is not a short-term wound. This is a very deep, deep wound, because when you open up oil into your environment, it is decades to get that back. So it's not just a question of what you do to the economy in the short term. If the economy fixes itself in the diversification, what have you done to your land? And I think young people really need to understand, please come back to the table and dialogue. Because the alternative that you've chosen is the wrong path. It's the wrong path for you. It's the wrong path for your future. It's the wrong path for your environment. And I believe that that's what we're saying. We have to dialogue. And I know that the rule of law for this administration is paramount. It will not acceptable for you to go around risking other people's lives and the criminality that is going on right now.
All right, Ajay Amina Mohammed, Minister of the Environment. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you very much.
All right, and now we'll flip over and get another helping of the headlines with Ayatunde Balogun.